Hi ho, hello. I'm Russian Bear, and today I want to talk about Russia. Is it Eastern country? Is it Western country? Is it which part of the world Russia is? And right now I'm trying to find an answer to this question by myself because actually I do not know yet. I'm Okay, for long years I thought that Russia it's Western country, it's European country, and at least Russia should go European way. And I'm still thinking so that European or USA it's kind of the same Western way of civilization, way where human rights is important, freedom it's more important, liberal ways, something like this, that it's the most important thing. And I'm still thinking that it's super important. I'm liberal guy, but at the same time, right now I'm studying Russian history. I'm studying it very carefully, without a haste, not to pass an exam, not to read something because I need to read. I need to do it because of work. It's my hobby. And when you do something like this for your soul, you starting to recognize a lot of things, and I think that some things I understand now better after I read a bit of history. But how you could read Russian history? It's very problematic thing because we have some not bad books of old historian like Kluchevsky and Solovyov and others, but at the same time Russian history, which Russia starts, when it starts, maybe you do not know, I think, but it starts at 9th century, so 850, 860, it's the start of would say like Russia as a country, as a state, as a governmental system, something like this. And so 850, more than 10 centuries pass, 11 and half centuries passed already, and it's quite a history. If we compare it to Germany, for example, because Germany as a country it's formed much later. So, because of course there are a lot of countries which are older than Russia, like China. It's oh my God, it's a lot of several thousand years old. And it's very interesting to look into this historian perspective because right now, when we're looking into today, we're trying to understand what's happening. You can't understand it if you do not know the history of your country. And I had very shallow, I read several times. I read like a study book for Russian students, but it's not really you do not remember anything from here. You do not understand. You just read it and you put it on the shelf and you forget about it in 2 days. But when you're reading, and when I started to tell you about that, it's very hard to learn Russian history. Why it's very hard? Because we do not have much certainty in a lot of events. A lot of stuff happened when in Russia we didn't had any historians. Nobody cared to write what happened. So, and some who did it, they did it also to fulfill their debt to their Tsar, to their king. So, I mean, almost every king or Tsar, he rewrite history. He tried to do it. And even right now in Russia, Vladimir Putin, our president, in 2013, he started initiative to create one union, the one history textbook for pupils in schools. And a lot of people, they criticize it because history, it's especially Russian history, it's something where we have a lot of different approaches to how you would estimate this or that event, from good side and from bad. And so having one history book, but I think for pupils doesn't really matter. I mean, when you're in school, if you would know just a bit history, it's okay if you have history book, because you have a teacher and he could like tell his own opinion and recommend you other books. So I don't think it's too crucial problem to have one book for children in schools. And if we have some other books they could read, it's good. So we have internet, so it's not really huge problem, I think. So Russian history is something very uncertain, I'll say. We could see certain events, like we know that Russia formed in 862, they say. Someone say something 850 something, and you could just remember this 850. That's it. And it's my approach to remembering dates. By the way, I hate to remember exact dates for everything. I think the most important is just to understand logic, how history developed, how country developed. So yeah, if we go back, what is it, Russia? Russia, is it country of the West or the East? I'll just tell you in a few words about our country history, about Russian history, without details, and just to give you a general idea. We had certain groups of people who came from south to the north, and we call them Slovenians, I think, something like this, Slavians. So these guys, at first, when they came there, there was guys who lived in the fields, Polyani, it's like fieldmen, and also guys who lived in the forest, Drevlyani, it's like forest people. And several tribes came from the south to the north to the central part of Russia, you would Central European part of the Russia, if you would look at modern map. So certain tribes came there and they started to live there. Some went to the hunting, some started to agriculture, and also where people settled. Of course, they settled at the rivers. So we had several rivers around. It's like Volga River or Dnieper River. So it's very huge, big rivers which go through all the continent from north to south. And these rivers, they why people live nearby to them, because water is life, and also because these rivers, it was like veins of the trade in that times, because in 800 or like 700, 800 year, there were Byzantium, Constantinople. I do not know English words for it. I'm sorry, guys, but I think it's like oh my god, Byzantium. Constantinople. It's like Istanbul, modern Istanbul. It's Constantinople. I think it's Constantinople, like in Russian, like in English. I think it's the same. So it was like a center of the civilization of this time, at like 9th century. Constantinople, Byzantium. It's like a center. It's like new Roman Empire. New, I mean, it's, these guys, they were the most powerful, and all trade in the Europe, it was concentrated in Constantinople. So these guys, when they had a trade, they did it actively with Vikings. We call them Varyagi. So it's guys who lived on the north, near border of the North Sea, and these guys, they had very hard conditions for life. That's why they had to, but they had a lot of wood and a lot of iron. That's why they become great warriors, because they didn't have a lot of food, but they had a lot of wood to build ships and a lot of iron to build weapons and armor. So they become very powerful warriors. Vikings, you know about Vikings, of course. And they started to roam around, grabbing everything which they could take, and also trading, of course. So at this time, there was a road from Byzantium, from Constantinople to the north, through these rivers, through Dnieper and through Volga. You could go to the North Sea, and so you could then make a road across Europe, and it was like big main trade road. And when this proto-Russian, not proto, but ancient Russian tribes, Slavians, when they started to live near these rivers, they started to be involved in trading. So actually, Russia as a state, initially, it's trading country. It's a country where people trade a lot. So our first cities, there was across these rivers, and it was traders, actually. It's very interesting, because I thought always that Russians, they are warriors, something like this, that they are, because when you look through Russian history, you could think so, because and now we have also a lot of military interests, and we have USA, we have Russia, it's like two main military countries. And also, of course, we have China and a lot of other countries. They also have nuclear power, and right now it's changed, but for a long time, Russian Empire, it was like military state. So, and when I was a pupil at school, I think I learned it, but then I just forgot it, and I thought before right now I'm reading history. But I thought, oh my God, we started to be a state as a traders. So trading made people, how it was. Guys from Constantinople, they swim with their boats through these rivers, and all the time these rivers, they broke. All the time they need to stay at night in certain areas, in certain cities. And our people, we have a tradition at that time even. I mean, guys, more than 1,000 years ago, Russian tribes, they had a tradition of hospitality. So it was like one of the most important things to do. If you have a stranger, you have to feed him, and he do not own you nothing for it. And these guys from Byzantium, when they had such a meeting, when they see that these guys which live in near these rivers, they are so good to them, and they also help to repair boats. They liked this road very much. And Russian people, these Russian tribes, Slavonian tribes, they also started to involve in trade. If at first they just repaired ships, they just had maybe sell some food and provision to these traders. After some time, they started to also trade stuff, because in Russian forest we had a lot of furs, and also a lot of other stuff we had for trade, and so we bought stuff, we sold, and these Russian cities, they started. It's not a cities. It wasn't cities. It was like in Russia we have city. It's a город. Город, it's a city. So, but городьба, it came from the word wall. So these places near the rivers, how they become towns. They started to build the walls, wooden walls, because there were a lot of wild animals around in the forest, and also a lot of like dangerous people who lived in the forest. Because, as I said, we had some Slavonian tribes which lived in the forest, and Latviyani, and they wasn't involved in trade much. They was like a very freedom-like people. They didn't want to have any involvement into these relations. So these guys who lived near the rivers, they had to start to build something to protect their houses and their quests. So it's how cities started, and it's very interesting. So at the same time, one of the most often quests in Russia was Vikings, Varyaks, because they came very often. They were involved in this trading, and they were very good warriors. So it's one of the best warriors at that time, and they started to offer their protection. And people often, trading people, they often hired them to guard their ships, and also some of the cities, these towns, they started to hire these Vikings, so they would guard their cities. And a lot of Vikings, they liked this country, because where they came from, it wasn't much food, and this is like country near the trade road with quite good climate, I mean better than they have. So a lot of Varyaks, Vikings, they started to live there. And as they were warriors, they were like strong, they often, among such people, you could meet strong leaders. So how Russian state first appeared, it's started when Russian people, we have different legends how it became. Someone say that we called for Vikings, we called someone to rule us, because these guys, they needed someone smart and good leader, and we didn't we wasn't able to find one, and that's why we called. It's one first approach. Someone think that it came like this. Someone think that it's just this one of these Vikings, one of the best leaders, Rurik. He just came and he took power into his hands, because he has a powerful warriors, and he just take it. And I mean, okay, it's how Russian state started. I just wanted to show you that Initially Russia, it was like these people, they came from people who were quite not military focused. It was people who hunted in the woods, who had agriculture. They didn't had wars with someone, and then some traders came. They started to trade. It was very calm, and actually, if you would look into Russia history, you wouldn't meet much events when Russia attacked someone first. Russia, in most cases, tried to defend itself. Russia sometimes it tried to take away something which were taken from it before. But Russia didn't try to conquer anything for a long time. So, okay, so of course we had a period like Russian Empire, and a lot of conquerment. In Middle Age, everyone fight each other and conquered each other. But I mean, it was started initially. Russia was like a state which was quite how it would be мирный, quite peaceful. Yeah, peaceful. Even guys who started Russian country as a country, really, it was Vikings. It was warriors from far north countries, and so all our tsars. This we have dynasty, first dynasty for several hundreds of years. It was Ruriks. It was all guys who came from this Rurik guy and his sons, and so it's very interesting that this Tsar dynasty, not modern Tsar because then it was Romanov, but before we have Ruriks, and all Middle Ages we had Russia was under control, you could say, okay, by Vikings, but actually right away when these Vikings came to Russia, they started to speak Russian, they took Russian names, they took Russian wives, and they become Russian very fast. And yeah, it's quite a common thing. Then a lot of people, actually Russia, it's huge conglomerate of different nations. And yeah, later on I'll speak about it. So it's how Russia started. And what you could think about it? Is it Western? Is it Eastern? I think it's something special. It's not Western, not Eastern. Okay, closer to West, of course, because later on, initially we started as a, I think, yeah, Western country, because Byzantium, Constantinople, they had huge influence to Russia. So initially Russia, it's, yeah, Western country. We could say like this. But it was the most Eastern Western country, you know. So it was, we were at the East. But yeah, a lot of influence from West came. But then, after several hundred years, our country developed and involved in a lot of processes. Our country became at like 1100 year. We became a very very great country at that time. For example, we had a lot of people who could read, more than in any other countries, even Western countries, European countries. We had a lot of people who know alphabet and who could read and who could count and other stuff. Why? Because when Russia became Orthodox country, our government, our kнязь, like Tsar, they needed someone to prepare a new generation of priests. So a lot of people, they had to read, they learned how to read, and it's very interesting that at this time, like 1100 years, something like this, Russia were quite powerful, and it was like a golden age of the start. But after some time, we had problems with heritage, because as all European countries also, we started to divide to one big country started to divide on small countries, because a son of a Tsar, not a Tsar, it's called a kнязь. It's like I don't know in Russian, in English, kнязь like a king, I think. You could say it like this. So we had great, великий князь, great king, and like just kings. And but I think even kнязь, it's English word also. So yeah, then you understand. Then the most powerful kнязь, they started to, when they died, they said, okay, the most oldest son would take the best area of my country, middle son would take a bit worse, and small one take with this, like Vologda, somewhere to the north, so some small part and not so rich. And it was a big mistake of Russian establishment at that time, because these sons, they started to fight with each other, because they all kind of had rights to become the greater one. And then at this bad moment came a lot of guys from the east, a lot of tribes from the east, like Guns, I think it's in English the same. And at the 13th century came Tatarian, Mongol Tatarian we call it, Mongol Tatarian Aiga. Like in Russia we had 200 years when Russia was under Mongol Tatarian conquerors. Maybe you heard about Chinggis Khan, Tamerlan, something like this. So these guys who owned all the Eurasia at that time, from 1250 till 1450. So this 200 years, Mongols, they were like the most powerful state. And when our country, after it was united, some of our knyazes, they were very smart, and they managed to unite it and to make a country powerful. But then their sons started to fight with each other, and at that time came Tatarians. Then Tatarians, it's very like Chinggis Khan, this guy who was like a genius strateg, and also he was super smart person at that time. He came from the bottom by this social staircase, and you should read about Chinggis Khan if you didn't, because it's one of the most interesting events. He was very cruel and murderer, and I think all leaders at that time was like this, but these guys especially, because it was from the east. And it's guys who could ride at their horses for weeks without getting off them, and they could like drink blood from their horses and then sew this these wounds on the horse. They like when they ride somewhere, they need to ride a lot of time. They could cut their horse neck, drink from it blood to it, and then sew this wound, and then continue without taking off the horse. So it was like super powerful warriors, the best archers of that time. They could shoot at 300 meters. It's madness. 300 meters with the bow, they could shoot effectively, even like till like 400, the most powerful guys. So they just came to Russia. So these guys, these Mongols, they came to Russia and they just took it because we in Russia at that time, these sons who tried to bite the head of each other, they wasn't united at all, and it was very easy to take it. But even if they would be united, Mongols, they was unbeatable at that time. It was just enormous power. And then 200 of years, actually it's not 200 because it was like 100 of quite strong, like 150 when Mongols, they were powerful. And then they also become to degrade, they also become weaker, and they started, as I think it's like evolution of every country. So at first one leader, he could unite everything and he could conquer a lot of things, and then his sons, they would they would start to bite each of head and destroy everything which he done. And it's all because not smart system of heritage of the kingship. So these guys, these Khans, they called, it's like kings of Tatarians. They holded Russia, and they were very cruel, and they destroyed a lot of people. So for example, almost no one were able to read after a certain time, when they it was like genocide, you could say. But at first it was very cruel, but then it became better. So I mean, it was very hard time for our country, and it's almost extinguished. It was almost like we were on the border of we almost gone, I think I'll say. So a lot of people still lived there. They had Russian language, they had Russian religion, Orthodox religion, and actually religion at that time, it was like a thing which saved country, because all these knyazhs, all these tiny people who controlled, Russian people who controlled certain areas of Russia, they all disliked each other, they all tried to kill each other, all these leaders. And Russian Orthodox Church at that time, it was the only, one of the only powers which prevented them to destroy each other completely. So it was also interesting. And Russia learned step by step, Russia learned how to survive in these crucial moments when Mongols, they took huge tax from Russia. They took people, powerful, all male people who were powerful. A lot of them they took for their war. So Mongolians, they were very smart guys. And also Mongolians, they wasn't barbarians. A lot of people, I think, thinks that Mongolians, like Tatar Mongolian we called, they were barbarians. But it wasn't like this, because these guys, they were very smart. They had very good system of political system, and they took a lot of stuff from China. And when they came to a certain city and they started to conquer it, what they did, sometimes they slay everyone, but always they took all best blacksmith, javelers, all best scholar people, all scientists, all what they could. Something, it was Genghis Khan, he understood that it's important to have knowledge. So actually these Mongolians, they were super smart guys, and they were perfect conquerors, because the only way how this nation, Mongols, could survive, it was conquer everything around without stop. And to do so, because there were a lot of fortresses, and you can't take fortress with guys on the horses. You need special siege weapons. So they learned how to build siege weapons, because they captured Chinese masters. They captured Chinese engineers who built these machines for them. So actually, of course, Russia had very harsh time under Mongolians, but at the same time we also took a lot of things from them. And our leaders, they become much smarter. Our leaders, they learned a lot of diplomacy, because these Mongolians, at first they just conquered everything, enslaved everyone, but then they recognized that it's much better to not to kill everyone, but to have a tax from them. So these guys, we conquer them, let they pay us every year like several hundreds of kilograms of silver every year. It's better than we just come and kill everything and nobody would live here. So Tatarians, Mongolians, Chinggis people, Chinggis Khan, his heritage, and they started such system. So they said that you could have your leader in Russia, like every area of Russia would have a leader, and this leader would be responsible for gathering taxes. And at first, Tatarians, they take these taxes by themselves, but then it very often came to riots. So Tatarians thought it better to leave it to Russians. So and it was good for Russians, because Russian leaders who took these taxes, they didn't take away everything, so they started to become richer. They started to have power. And also, what's interesting that the more Russia, the harder time Russia had, the more united it become. And it's like always it was in Russia. And Second World War, the same thing. So the hardest times in Russia we have, the more powerful we appear. It's interesting. I think it's not only Russia, a lot of other countries, they have maybe similar properties. But in Russia, I think if you look at this history, you would just be amazed how it was. Because we were from the one step from distinction, and it was not one time, a lot of times like this. So also a lot of people who lived nearby to Russia, a lot of other tribes, other countries, they were distinguished. So they were destroyed, they stopped. You wouldn't see such countries on the map today. And this property of Russian people, it's interesting one. So under these Tatarian Mongolian, our leaders, these knyazes, they was vassals. They was like I think vassal, it's English word. They were under control of this Orda of Mongolians, and at the same time they become more united. At least this tiny knyaz, they become less independent, because taxes should be taken from everyone, and people who took these taxes, they started to be new leaders. And after some time, the most powerful country in Russia appeared to be Moscow area. Why Moscow? Because it was quite far from the horde from Arda. It was quite far, so it was like first you see Ryazan and then Moscow. So also it was quite far away from Litva, Litva. I think it's like the same country today, Litva, but I'm not sure how in English it would be. Like I think Litva also, and Litva country, it was like also one of the most powerful eastern countries at that time, and a lot of problems our Slavian country had from them. But at the same time, it was like one folk for a long time. We had a common language, common Orthodox church. So it's also interesting part. So why Moscow became powerful? Because it was far away from Litva, far away from horde, from Tatarians, and it became very richer and richer, because not much involvement in wars appear, and also we had some smart decisions, and just random events which made Russia powerful. We had first stone fortress. It was in Moscow, like Moscow Kremlin, which you could look. If you come to Russia, you would see Red Square, Moscow Kremlin. In old times, it was white. It was white, and it was first Russian fortress. And it was very hard to conquer it, because even if you would look at Russian Kremlin right now, you would see a lot of such narrow windows, like perfect for shooting from the bow and with guns. So this Russian fortress, it's helped a lot of times to it was like foundation of Moscow area, and saved a lot of times Moscow from being destroyed. But yeah, Moscow was destroyed a lot of times too. Anyway, so this time when horde ruled Russia, a lot of historians, they look at it like it was very bad and Russia was almost distinct. But some historians, they say that like horde was a factor, an impact which made these Russian tiny areas to become united. Because if we wouldn't had this enemy, we wouldn't had any purpose to unite. And also we learned so much we took from Mongolians, because guys, they were the most powerful country, the most powerful government, and they were not barbarians, they were like, it was like Roman Empire, but Eastern type of it. And we took a lot of stuff learned a lot of stuff from them about leadership, about war tactics. We learned how to fight, because as I said before, okay, we started as a traders, as a peaceful, but then we started to fight a lot too. But Mongolians, they were like their tactics. Later on, Hitler used Mongolian tactics. You know, Hitler he took the idea of these tank spears. A lot of stuff Hitler took from Mongolian tactics, and it means that, I mean, it was 500 years ago, and so I wouldn't say that it was like, it was of course awful, a lot of people died, and yeah, but it's a history. At that times it was like normal life. But I mean, it was like impact for Russian country for the first time to unite as a real powerful force, real independent and united powerful force. So, and it was Eastern influence, and a lot of Mongolians and Tatarians, they came to Russia, and they started to, when horde ended, they started to become like, how it would be, like not the servants, but people, like a princess, like marquises, grafs. I mean, like they came to Russian elite, because a lot of people outside, so they a lot of Mongolians, they came to this rich Russian, to reach Moscow area, because it was at like 100, 350, like 100, 1400 year. Moscow area was one of the most richest parts of the eastern Europe, and Mongolians, they came. So I mean that actually a lot of Russian people, they have Mongolian blood in them, and of course in Russia we have Tatarstan, for example. So you have even areas when Tatarians live, and these guys, they are Muslims, for example, because when Genghis Khan just started his empire, he wasn't a Muslim, but later on his heritage, they become Muslims, and so our multinationality of Russia, modern multinationality, it started at Tatarian Mongol horde at that times, and it's also made our country more powerful. Actually, made it give us a lesson how to live together with different nations. So a lot of Eastern influence we had at that 200 years of the horde. So we started at 850, and later on at 450, at 250, like 400 years past, we start. So, okay, let's again, so you would remember something from this video. At 850, Russia starts. 400 years passed, and Russia had Genghis Khan, Mongolian, Tatarian horde, conquered by horde 400 years ago. 400 years passed, so at 1250, and after 200 years, Mongolian, this horde degraded, and at 1450 Russia become free again. And actually it's happened even like 50 years before horde ended, like more, maybe more, but it's easier to remember like this. So we had almost 200 years of Eastern experience in our code, even in genetic code. And yeah, a lot of people, first Kazakhs appeared. Do you know Kazakhs? Maybe you heard about them. It's guys who lived on the borders of Russia to protect it, like Cherkessian Kazakhs. They started as a heritage of this Mongolian who came to Russia to serve. And we had a lot of influence from the East this time. And after it, we had again a turn to the West. So it's so far where I read the history, because I am reading very carefully, and it's huge. And I'll continue this talk. I'll tell you more. But for now, you could already understand that Russian history consists from a lot of different pages, because I mean, it's one thing when Genghis Khan came to your country and okay, conquered it, it became ruined, and he went away, and you didn't see it again. Okay, but we had 200 years under Golden Horde, under Tatarian Mongolians, after this Chinggis heritage, 200 years. And it's quite a lot, and it has influenced very much our country. And when people, they have an argument, is Russia Eastern country or Western? They should look into the history of our country, and they would see that we have a lot of Eastern, we have a lot of Western in us. And maybe actually, maybe Russia is a special, who knows? Because it's quite popular opinion among Russian like Slavinists. They think that Russia has their own way, their special way, like a third way. And if you would look carefully, you would see that it has some truth under this phrase. Maybe it has special way. I think every country thinks that it's special. Every country thinks that it has its own way. But I mean, okay, European countries, they all united under European Union, and it's like one direction to certain place, to certain spot. I mean, they have all one direction. And Russia, it's hard to judge right now on modern terms, because right now we have globalism. Right now everything is very changed, and you wouldn't see much difference between Russian teenager and American teenager, or European teenager, or even Japanese teenager. They all kind of the same. So these borders, they become less strict. But if we would look at the systems, at the governments, not at the people, but at the systems, you would see that each country has its own way, actually. And I still have this question in my heart. I do not know an answer. Is Russian Eastern or Western? Or it's a special way? It has a special way. I doubt that Russia is Eastern country. It's more probable that it's Western. So for me, the choice is Russia Western country, or is it has its own way? I do not have an answer for this question. I'm reading history to understand it. Maybe I'll be able to tell you more in my next videos. So please subscribe to my channel. Have a good day. I am Russian Bear. Bye bye. Please write your comments.